All right, so now that we know a little bit about Jenn, the physical side, her professional side, and the fact that she's total badass, that she not only competed once, she competed like 8 times and nailed the condition. And so Jenn is single.
Yes.
And so this was something that her and I have in common, that we've both been married and didn't work out for one reason or another. So how have you found, you've been single for how many years?
Oh my gosh.
Well, how many, I'm sorry, I should have asked you when you got, I forgot. So yeah.
I got married in 2004. We were together 3 years, so 5, 6, 7, separated for 2, and then divorced about 6 months later. So it's been, I don't even feel like I was married at this point. That's how long ago it was.
So the divorce was finalized when? I mean, give or take, or
So
when, I should say when it was over.
Like 2009, 2010.
Okay, so you've been single for 13, 14 years.
There's been
plus.
a few boyfriends in there.
Right. Now, what I was saying to her, and I love to say this off the air, there's something about it because, anytime you hear, and this is something that all of the broadcasters do, especially for football. I love Jim Nantz and Aikman and all of these guys, but they always say stuff like, and we were talking to Bill Belichick off the air. You're allowed to say you were talking to Bill Belichick, pal. You don't have to say off the air like, oh, you're so cool, you get to meet with Bill Belichick. But we were talking off the air. So going from, as a younger person, courtship, marriage, things going wrong, and becoming, again, a single woman in your, if I may say, early to mid-30s, what were you expecting from the male of the species versus what you have found to be the case?
Gosh, I mean...
Because it is tough when you haven't been single and all of a sudden you're kind of thrown out there.
Back then, like when I first went through it all, I dated a lot. Like when I healed and I moved forward from everything, obviously, it wasn't a quick road, but I dated a lot. Like I met a lot of guys. Most were super nice. They just weren't a love match.
Right, they weren't for you.
Some I stayed friends with, some, I didn't. And I've had several boyfriends over the years, and I don't know, I just find I am maybe too much for people, if that makes sense.
Well, but like what you just said, there are certain things that you need, not necessarily from a guy, because the cliche, she don't need no man.
No.
You don't need a man to fulfill you. Like I knew that the first time we met. I was like, okay, well, she's nobody's fool. Anybody who crosses her, but you just have a look. It's not like resting bitch face, but you have a look like you know what's up. That you are not a fool, and that anybody who thinks that you are or thinks they can take advantage of you, they're going to be on the wrong end of probably a rant or something like that.
Don't make me go there.
but you want somebody, of course, we all do, who is going to have respect for you.
Yes.
Is going to respect the fact that working out, being a fitness instructor is a big part of your life.
It is.
It's not just something you randomly do on a day where you feel like it.
Mm-hmm. It's a job.
Right. Literally, figuratively, symbolically.
I can't just not go, which is
right.
A lot of times when you're dating somebody, well, can't you just cancel class? No, it doesn't work like that. I work for somebody to provide a service to the members, and you can't just cancel a class.
Now, have you at any time been close to being engaged again, or?
No.
Oh, you haven't? So
I mean, I had a boyfriend at one point. It was probably 2000, 2011. I actually had 2 boyfriends that I was close to possibly moving in with.
Okay, right.
So that
when
was,
I say engaged, right? If
the trajectory, I guess, going down that road.
Right. There are times where you can move in with somebody for a reason that isn't that you think it's necessary. Sometimes it just makes more sense.
Yeah.
And you really like the person.
Right.
All right. So I guess because, as I said, Jenn, who her Instagram handle bikinis and jeeps, she is hilarious. But she's had the kinds of experiences that, from the guy's perspective, it's totally different.
Yeah.
But what are some of the stories that happened that you can't believe a guy thought that he could do this or get away with this? Like, because again, from my perspective, I don't really have a story of a woman doing something where I'm like, yeah, I could say, well, that was dumb. Why did she curse me out? But I mean, like, you see in a movie, and one of the kind of funny comedies that Def Jam Had to Be a Player with Bill Bellamy, the former MTV host, and he was a guy who had a steady girlfriend. The character's name was Lisa, I remember this. And he basically he had about at least 10 women he was hooking up with on the regular, while he had the woman that he had, I believe he bought a ring for, and was getting ready to propose to. So, like, that's a kind of thuggery that I can't even conceive of.
Who has the time or the energy for this?
Well, that too. Like, what are you doing?
Aren't you tired?
Yeah, right. But so, I mean, what are some of the stories of like the graveyard? And forgive me, fellow gentlemen. There's sort of, but I'm sure there's a graveyard of d-bags.
My funniest stories are probably from people that I never actually went out with, that I perhaps just maybe matched with online or something like that.
Right, which is fine.
The grossest, creepiest one, I remember having a conversation, or we were texting, I think it was probably text, and it started taking a weird turn like, oh, I wish that you were my sister. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because like that to me is a very abnormal thing to say to say to somebody that you would potentially be going out on a date with or something like that. And his response was, well, yeah, because then like if you were in the shower, I could creep in and take a peek. And I was like, please tell me that this is a joke. Because I mean, I don't think that's particularly funny at all. It's
no.
Super creepy and weird. And he flipped it on me and was like, well, you have no sense of humor. And I was like, if that's what you think is funny, then yes, I have no sense of humor.
Yeah,
I own that. That's fine.
Damn.
He was like, lose my number and never speak to me again. And I was like, yes, you got it.
We finally agree on something.
No problem.
Jeez.
Weird, super creepy, not funny at all. Ew.
Right. So right, you don't want drama.
That's disgusting.
That's not even drama. But you don't want to fight with people. Sometimes people just aren't matches.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's life.
Right.
You're gonna have people that you meet that you don't particularly find to be a good match to you, and vice versa.
Right. What's the now? Have you ever had an experience where a guy that you were attempting to not get rid of, but that you were attempting to not communicate with for this reason, who just wouldn't leave it alone? You had to like block him on every form of either media or phone.
I have had one or two. I'm not a big blocker because I feel like it's so dramatic and it's such a big most of these people are not that important to me yet.
Right.
At that point. So like if we don't match, we don't click, we just go our separate ways, like
which is usually
there's no big deal to have a conversation like, I don't know, I felt like a friendship vibe, blah blah blah, I wish you the best of luck. I would actually respect someone for doing that versus I'm not a fan of the ghosting.
Right.
It is so incredibly disrespectful and rude, but that seems to be the way everybody handles things, or most people handles things these days. But there have been one or two that maybe didn't take it well and then get nasty with you, and it's just like, really, you'd have to go down this road? Like, I could smell your bad breath from across the table, but I wasn't going to say that to you. Like, whatever, just go along with your life. It's whatever, see you around.
Right. Well, I had an experience, and maybe you had something similar. So, on the other side, obviously, but where I met a woman on one of the apps, and went to her job, and normal conversations. Worked at a health food store, and we were chatting. Seemed completely above board, and then we talked on the phone. We were continuing to text, and then a couple of days later, she just basically randomly says, I don't want to ghost you, but I just don't think you're a match, or we're a match. Take care.
Okay.
Right. Perfectly fine. So she very quickly blocks me on WhatsApp. She undoes her Hinge or whatever it was. And the last text I sent to her, wishing her to take care, never went through.
That's so strange.
So a couple of days later, I get a Facebook friend request from a name that I don't recognize, but it's very clearly her.
Oh.
And I'm just like
confused.
What? Right. So this same sequence of block, unblock happened again.
Oh gosh.
And I don't understand, because
I don't either.
If something horrible happens, or if there are threats,
of course. course.
That's different. But if it's just two people who aren't on the same page, and sometimes it's, because we all know this, sometimes fireworks can go off and two people can get together and like really get together, have sex, and one person catches feelings real quick, and the other person is still coming across as, well, we're not really together.
Yeah.
Then there's hurt feelings, and then I totally, not that I need to understand, but it makes more sense to me if somebody who is really hurt goes that extra mile,
right,
and blocks and
cut
goes.
off contact.
Right, because sometimes it's just too painful.
Yes.
But in a situation where that doesn't happen, what are we doing? Why are we blocking? Why are we
weird?
Yeah, I don't really get that.
I don't either. I had somebody that I think I had met online, and we stayed friends, and we would talk, and then he would disappear. And I'd be like, all right, he probably has a girlfriend. And then he would reappear and refriend me. And this went on and on and on for years. And at some point, he messaged me, and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, if we're friends, why do you block me or delete me every time you date somebody? I seem to be the woman that girlfriends and wives and everybody love to hate.
Right.
I'm not trying to take your man. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
Right.
But I just got so angry with him because I was like, I'm done. Like, if we're friends all the time. And if not, then we're done. So I blocked him.
Right. But that was something where you were just tired of
Done.
being, yeah.
It's like a game. A game that I do not want to participate in.
Yeah, and I understand that. And again, from the guy's perspective, it's, you can have a similar experience, but it's just always going to come across differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I told a story on Kenny's podcast, and Kenny, may he rest in peace. But it bears repeating, which is that not long after I became single, after my marriage ended, I matched up with this young woman, not on one of the apps. We actually met on Instagram. She must have had some kind of hashtags where stuff would pop up for her that ordinarily wouldn't, where she was just going, searching, seeing, what she could see. And I recorded a video during like a snowstorm. And it wasn't anything special, but I guess my Long Island accent, which sometimes doesn't come across as strong as others, I was getting riled up, and my accent, she said, you were so hilarious. I was like, I wasn't trying to be funny, but she just messaged me out of nowhere. And so we started to communicate, and I should point out she was very, very young. It was the kind of girl I never would have gone for. I was like, no, she's way too hot. There's no chance. So she's 20 years old. She was going to school to be a teacher, but she's now a teacher in Queens. And we started communicating, and then I know this is a cliche. She had a boyfriend. He was away in Florida, and we had what would amount to an affair. Now, I was single. I should point out, I was not with anybody, so at least from my end. But point is, she was not upset. She wasn't mad at herself. She said this felt right. Who knows what he's doing in Florida? That was actually an experience of personal growth for me. But when the boyfriend was coming back from Florida, and we had hung out a couple of times, and she always said, oh, you're the nicest guy I ever met. I just wish you weren't 25 years older than me, because we could actually go out and not make it seem like we're doing something wrong here, or that this is dirty. So she told me, I don't think that I can talk to you anymore. And she literally meant talk. She didn't mean talk like, yeah, I'm talking to this girl and we're hooking. Right. She just meant, I don't think that we can communicate as long as I'm with this guy. So I didn't hear from her, and I didn't get angry. I understood. Sometimes people are put in our path for a reason we may understand at the time or may not.
That's what I always say.
And this young lady was put in my path for not bad reasons. It should not have been a flex, but it was. And it gave me confidence, because I'm telling you, this was the kind of girl that I would have not wasted my time looking at twice. I said, no, there's no chance. Like me at 21, meeting her at 21, I would have just been looking at the floor. It ain't happening. But somehow, as a much older, presumably more together person, she was really hot for me. So she kind of went away, and we didn't talk. And then about 6 months later, she messaged me out of the blue, and the same thing kind of repeated itself. As long as both people know the score, and as long as both people don't catch major feelings, it's not so bad. The issue is, again, when somebody out of nowhere stops talking to you and acts like you are dead to them, and there is no reason for that.
No.
because it doesn't always have to be, we don't have to see people. If it's like, hey, you and I seeing one another, given our history, not the best idea, fine. But if you like somebody and two people who like each other, for one to ghost the other, it's very childish and immature, and it's unnecessary.
Right.
It doesn't have to go that way.
And if you respect each other, it's mean.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just mean-spirited. I don't know.
Right. And I could say that my last ex-girlfriend did not, this was something where it was very much what I would expect of a kind of toxic guy, which is you are not allowed to communicate with any woman who is not your sister or mother.
Oh, dear.
Period. And so that was a major source of strife where it's like, I'm not going to stop talking to my ex-wife.
Right.
I'm not going to act like my ex-girlfriend, who is a wonderful human being, she is not dead to me.
Right.
And this is, people have boundaries, and I used to almost joke, say, what you're saying, these aren't boundaries, these are ransom demands. It's not the same thing. And so,
if you're telling me to do something versus saying, this is how something makes me feel, can we talk about it?
Right.
That's different.
But saying that you have to do this, you can't do this, you better stop doing this, you better start doing this.
Yes.
It's at the point of a bayonet. Not good communication, ladies and gentlemen. We can all agree that if you have to coerce your partner into doing things, that's not a good situation.
No.
Or if you feel like you're being coerced
Major
by your
red
partner.
flags.
Yeah, it's major red flags. Exactly. So what's the worst first date story versus best? Let's start with worst, because worst is usually funnier.
I haven't had too many bad dates, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, that's fantastic.
Maybe, it wasn't the worst, but we spoke on the phone for, I want to say 3 hours. We had a lot of mutual people in common. We were in the same club scene back in our 20s or 30s or whatever. And the conversation was amazing. So you would think when you met in person, things would click.
Right.
It doesn't always click. And he asked me to choose where we were going to meet. So I chose, and then he was like, you can order whatever you want off the menu. And I was like, well, how about this? No. How about this? No. Everything, it just it did not click. And then he orders a drink and he doesn't like the drink. It just did not mesh at all. And he was one of the ones that we spoke about a week later. He texted me and he said, you know what? I just don't feel a connection. I wish you the best of luck, blah, blah, blah. And so we were completely on the same page with that. It was no hard feelings. It was nothing. So it wasn't really wasn't a horrible date, but it wasn't a great date.
And certainly not what you expected ahead of time.
No, not at all.
All right, yeah, that's not so bad. I'm going to quickly, my worst first and last date was I met a woman from Connecticut, the part of Connecticut that is not that far from Long Island. We're not talking about Mohegan Sun, but the very front, where you're just off the Cross Bronx and you go a little. We were having what I thought was a pretty good first date, and then her dog got sick. And she took her dog to presumably the pet vet, and I never heard from her again.
Yikes.
That's not what you would expect.
No, it's so weird.
Right. And she seemed, well, now that I'm thinking about it, because she did seem a little obsessed with the dog. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the fact that I don't think the dog was that sick. Hey, maybe this was her way of getting rid of me. I got to get this guy out of my apartment. Oh my God, my dog's dying. Huh?
Oh my God.
And it was January of 2019. It was one of the coldest days of the year, and I had parked. See, this is a problem. This is where GPS doesn't necessarily help you. If you're in an apartment or a housing complex where you don't know where you are, you're completely unfamiliar. In my case, in Connecticut, where I don't really go. So you could drop me anywhere on Long Island. If there is a name of a town,
you can figure it out.
I'll be able to get back home, or at least call an Uber. But back then I had my car. I wasn't thinking in terms of Uber. And you certainly don't want an Uber from Connecticut, my gosh. But I had to park a couple of blocks away from the apartment. And it was about 12 buildings over a 3-block radius. Every building looked exactly the same, and the parking lots all looked the same. So it's about 8 degrees when I got to tell you, she threw me out of her apartment in as nice a way as possible. I thought, I'll wait for you to get back. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
She's like, no, we can't do that. I've got to get in. I can't. I just met you. You have to, okay, I'm sorry. And then out there in 6 degrees, walking around and freezing, And unfortunately, I went to every parking lot before I finally found my car. It was 20 minutes so that's really probably my worst first date, and it seemed like there was a connection. We had spoken on the phone, we video called. It wasn't just like a random, you show up and you don't know what they look like, or that you show up and it's not the same person.
Oh my gosh, I've never had that happen, but most of my guy friends have had that happen.
Yes, it seems crazy. It does happen, and I ask you if this ever happened to you. So. This is something I talked about with Kenny, also on the air, but also off the air, where he got such a kick out of this. So I don't begrudge anybody for trying to make money. Okay, and I'm going to say this with a straight face: sex work is work. I make no judgment on anybody. If somebody is willing to pay a certain amount of money, it's fine. It doesn't bother me. But that's not what the dating apps are for, in my opinion. Because you have other sites where that's what it is.
Right.
So, okay, match with somebody on Bumble or Tinder or whatever it is. And if there's not a blue check mark or whatever kind of thing, you say, okay, well, now it's already a little, not that it's suspicious, but if you see the check mark, you know they're at least who they say they are. Because then, with the photo identification.
The verification or whatever.
Yeah. So this had happened to me a number of times before I got wise to it, where I matched with somebody, and it's normal conversation. Yeah, I'd really like to meet you. I live, Hauppauge, or I live in Melville, whatever it is. And they would suddenly say, my price is $500. You're buying the drinks, and let's see if we connect.
Ay.
Now, the first few times, something along those lines, but other times they were more brazen and said stuff like, it's $400 an hour.
Wow.
Again, I may have gotten a little salty or gotten a little aggravated, but only because you're not supposed to do that here. But I never said that. Usually it just ended up with, blocking, or in the case of those, you just unmatch.
Of course.
No big deal. But usually I was nice and I said something like, you could definitely get that amount of money, but not for me.
Not
Sorry.
here.
But I started to get wise, and then I said, you know what, the next time this happens, I know what I'm going to say. So the woman who looked, she actually had verification, now that I'm thinking about it. She was 23 or 24. This is like maybe 3.5 years ago. And she lived in Melville. She went to like Half Hollow Hills. So she was legit. This was actually the person I was talking to. This was not some kind of scam. She's 23, 24. I think you're really hot. You're a really hot older guy. I'm into older guys. Can I call you daddy? She's doing this whole spiel.
Hashtag daddy.
Right, hashtag daddy. I'm not going to. So we're having, again, normal conversation. She says, are you free tonight? I'd like to meet you. Well, actually, I am. Maybe we can go to, if you want to go to Cheesecake. I know Cheesecake Factory now. There was a whole thing that if a guy asks a girl to Cheesecake Factory is great. Guys, if you feel like taking a first date there, if the choice is McDonald's, Chili's, Applebee's, or Cheesecake Factory, you can go in at 10 o'clock and order a full meal, and it's made to order. But anyway, forget that. I love Cheesecake Factory. But so I asked this young lady, and we exchanged phone numbers, and she was sending me pictures to show this is really me, and I know it's really you. So I said, would you like to meet at Cheesecake Factory? And as soon as she messaged back, I'm like, here it comes. She goes, I'm not interested in having dinner.
Okay. How about dessert?
Yeah, right. I wasn't quick enough. I wasn't quick enough. I said, okay, you're not interested in having dinner, so what did you have in mind?
Yeah.
She says, well, if you want 2 hours, it's $450.
Oh my.
So I said, you're in luck. If you want 2 hours, it's $500. I take PayPal, I take Cash App, I take Zelle. She messages back, LOL.
That's funny.
I message back, LOL. This conversation is now over. Take care.
Goodness.
But that's the thing. That's not what those apps are for. And maybe I shouldn't get insulted, but I feel like saying, no offense. You've looked at my pictures. I don't really need to spend $500 for 2 hours that might just have me buying you drinks and you going home.
There's apps for that.
Exactly.
So I don't understand what the confusion is, ladies.
Yeah. Did you ever?
Gentlemen, I don't know.
Right.
It could go both ways.
100%. No, I'm sure if they were like older ladies, like the show Golden Bachelor, but an older woman with a younger guy, that's fine. But just use the app for what they're intended for. You don't have to try to shake people down for money.
Right.
I mean,
that's
look.
Scary.
Yeah. So what was your
my best?
Yeah, your best first date.
So it happened. Was it last summer or the summer before? I matched with somebody on Tinder, and I kind of recognized him, but I wasn't sure. And I was like, I think we go to the same gym, so I'm not going to say the name of the gym. And
it's not Bev's.
It's not Bev's, and we wind up speaking on the phone. Everything is going really well. We're trying to figure out, when to get together or something like that. And he calls me and he says, I have an idea. And I said, okay, fine. What's up? And he said, do you want to go to a Zach Brown concert? And I said, well, I don't really listen to country, but I heard they do, he does covers or whatever. So that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get out of work early or something, whatever. I don't remember what it was that I needed to do. So I got it all situated. I was able to meet up with him, clicked, holding hands, having a great time, a little smoochy smooch. And I don't do anything afterwards. He drops me off. Everything is fine and dandy. And within a week, disappeared.
Right. But you know what? And I've had something like
best date I've ever had.
Right.
I had a blast.
It really feels like there's a connection, and then the person just kind of flies the coop, or who knows what their situation is. Maybe they were just looking for something for one night.
Right.
But before I close this segment, there's one of the best movies. I don't have a poster, but there's an early '80s, and I know you haven't seen this.
Oh.
But there's an early '80s film noir called Body Heat with William Hurt, unfortunately, the late great William Hurt, and Kathleen Turner. And we know nothing of her. We're following him, and he goes to a bar, and he sees this devastatingly attractive woman, played by Kathleen Turner. She's very young. She's maybe 23, 24 at the time. And he doesn't know her story. She's actually married very well to a wealthy developer. He doesn't know that she already knows who he is. Mm-hmm. Kind of like you knew that. No, I think I know this guy.
Yeah.
She already knows who he is, and that's actually part of the plot. But we don't know at the time that she already knows who he is, or why she would know who he is. So he starts chatting her up, and he's young. He's an attorney. He's not a great attorney, but he went past the bar, and he's done some decent work. And he's chatting her up, and he basically says, I need somebody to tell me things are going to be okay. I need somebody to rub my tired muscles and support me. And he gives her this whole spiel. And Kathleen Turner, with that smoky voice of hers, she goes, well, Ned, you should get married. And he shoots back, I just need it for tonight. All right. I think that was also really good. Truth, that's literally what the scene is.
That was awesome.
Yeah, just need it for tonight.